Just hit go live
Oh, okay.
under brand.
Okay, we're live.
Okay.
And
Oh,
you are frozen.
I'm frozen.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media LLC. Broaden the scope of exposure for your business by going beyond the interview. Learn more at www.jmmbmediallc.com or email us at jmmbradio@gmail.com. Today, we welcome authors of the upcoming anthology Courage in Cannabis, Volume 2, envisioned by Holistic Health Practitioner Dr. Bridget Williams of Green Harvest Health. We look forward to sharing with you insights and experiences on this topic. Today, we have with us Rick Anstis, who is a husband and father of 4 wonderful children. He is a caregiver, activist, and entrepreneur, providing a voice for the understanding and use of the cannabis plant. He is a caregiver in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program. Welcome, Rick.
Yes,
Thank you for
welcome.
having me.
Absolutely.
Well, Rick, let's find out where you began your journey. What interested you first in this whole area of cannabis, marijuana?
Well, as a younger gentleman, I experienced cannabis in my teenager years, in my early 20s. And as I got older, I realized and learned more about its medicinal values. And as my father was fighting cancer and eventually lost that battle, I was able to go out to Colorado for about a year when they became recreational in 2015 and really absorb a lot of good information. And I brought that back and became a caregiver here in Michigan under our medical marijuana program, and it kind of started there.
Okay. So, how did you come into your current arena of being a caregiver with
Um,
marijuana?
well, again, as that kind of inspired me with the loss of my father to cancer and seeing so many people across the world battle that disease. It really inspired me to learn as much as I possibly could about cannabis and why it seemingly at the time, 5 years ago or so now for me, that it had this reverse effect, this effect on such debilitating things, such as cancer. So it made me want to know. And since science wasn't doing it, we had this program here in Michigan. I was able to take my botanist skills and apply them to uh, growing a plant in its specific. So I was given in Michigan, we're given 5 patients. We're allowed to have 5 patients, and we can grow 12 plants for each patient. That really allows the caregiver to go broad uh, for their patient. So if you have rheumatoid arthritis and you're trying to isolate what terpenes and the amount of THC and maybe CBD or even CBG that they need for their medicine, whether it be a topical or ingested or a smokable product, I can accentuate those strains and plants to find exactly what they need. And I really found a lot of uh, joy in doing that because you could literally, it was your patient that was answering all your questions. Of course, I did testing and lab testing and validated what I was doing as well with the terpene profiles and the percentages. But the patient themselves is the one that's answering your questions, and they say, wow, this particular strain of Gorilla Glue or this particular strain of Blue Dream or whatever it is really seems to be isolating on my MS symptoms or my Crohn's disease symptoms. And that gives me as a grower, like, okay, well, then this plant had myrcene and limonene and it had this. So now I can go back to that and say, was it this? And, slowly isolate specific strains so people can get specific medicine. Because as broad as that plant is, it doesn't always hit the mark. Sometimes people smoke cannabis for the first time and find great anxiety and stress. And it's not necessarily the cannabis, it was possibly the strain that they were ingesting. So lots of knowledge over the years of learning with the patients that I've had, and it's very exciting to do these things and learn them.
Wow. I hear you saying how broad the plant works, and you talk about, I heard you mention MS as well as various types of cancers. Have you found anything in any other area of medical malaise that you find that marijuana surprisingly is working?
Well, honestly, nothing about cannabis working surprises me anymore. It's just so diverse. I often compare cannabis to humans. Like every time you grow a new seed, it's like another human. It's just it's so diverse. It can be so different. One strain of a handful of seeds could have 5 or 6 different phenotypes, and those phenotypes break down as to what that plant's going to accentuate. So I really think medicinally and with medicine and in much brighter minds than myself could take all those components and again isolate them for specific things. And I think the combination could be, I don't know, I mean, it could be a very big combination of how much CBD or how much limonene or how much not. There's 72 different terpene profiles, and they all interact with THC and CBD differently as they go through the system. So, like I said, the calculating what it could do could just be endless.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a lot of good information for people to hear because people are still curious about cannabis, and you know that people have different attitudes towards the whole industry that's sprung up around cannabis. And yet we hear constantly all the good stories about how it has impacted people's lives positively. So my next question for you is about your part in this anthology, Courage in Cannabis Volume 2. What is the name of your chapter?
My chapter is called Deeper Roots.
And what is that about?
Well, it kind of touches on my journey and passing through the last 10 years or so of here in Michigan, working with legislation, House representative, holding events, bringing awareness, helping people, trying to be a bigger voice for the people, like you said, that maybe you're turned off by it. One of the things I tell people a lot is a story of oh, sorry, am I still there?
Yeah.
Flipped out there a little bit.
You're okay. We're a little frozen. There you go.
Yeah, we're still there.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
I can hear you.
are we? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was a story of an elderly lady that I met when I was 21, and we smoked a joint together, and she was 91 years old, and it was so amazing that cannabis plant was able to bring me and a 91-year-old lady together, so far apart on the spectrum of age, but yet had this and it's just an amazing thing in that manner. And I really hope to bring it to more of the people that go to church and that see it in a bad light, so they can understand it, that it is a plant of God, and it's a seed bearing plant, and it's all those things that match goodness and healing. So Sometimes once they understand that, and once they see it firsthand, sometimes with their spouses or whatever the situation might be, that somebody might use cannabis around them, I've seen many people change their viewpoints, which is hopefully the perpetual motion that we'd like to see.
Very fine. So, what made you decide to publish within this uh, anthology?
Well, Dr. Bridget asked if I would like to, and I felt very honored that I had a relevant enough impression on her to be asked. So I was kind of just more flattered by it. And it's not hard to tell my story because it's things that I've already done. So, but yeah, I was just very excited to have the opportunity. I'm not a writer or anything, but the way that she puts this book together, it just helps you all the way, even if you're not an author, so to speak. She's able to guide us in the way that can tell our story that readers will, be drawn to. So she's a very unique woman. I was very blessed to meet her last year.
Excellent. So, we have a little more time. So, if you could just tell us, you spoke about this one woman, this elderly woman, who was sort of like a highlight for you and showing what cannabis can do. Have you had any other highlight in your journey that,
Oh, absolutely. Highs and lows as a caregiver. Uh, I never say that the medicine that I save anybody's life or anything like that, or I heal anybody. I personally feel like I'm a vessel to somebody's choice and option for just to make a decision to utilize this life-saving plant. And I'm also able to provide them it, through growing it. And ultimately, it's the plant, the plant that is doing it. So that's where I always put that. And I often have cancer patients. I've had numerous times various cancer patients that are still here. They cry on your shoulder. It's an overwhelming feeling to know that I was once told that I have no hope, and now I am free and clear. It's hard to swallow, and it's amazing, and it's beautiful, and it's a lot for people to, as a caregiver, to take on, because I've had to learn to humble myself in that manner, that it's the plant that's doing this. No matter what I'm doing, I may be helping, I may be able to be a vessel of knowledge or a source, but it's not me. I don't know enough about it. The plant knows everything, what it needs to do once it hits your system.
that's
So
beautiful. Yes.
yeah.
Thank you for that. That is so encouraging to hear someone speak from the point of humility. It's the plant, it's a God given plant, something that was created, and we have been blessed to learn how to use it. And we are blessed that there are people like yourself who took the time not to stay within the pain of losing a parent to cancer, but to make that almost the leverage for yourself to go forward into helping other people, and now bringing your knowledge and your experience into this book, Courage in Cannabis, Volume 2. So we really thank you so very, very much for being with us, and we look forward to speaking with you more in depth. I think you have a really interesting story, and we just got a little teeny tiny bit of it, and would love to hear more. Okay. Thank you so much, Rick. It was a pleasure.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, Ruth, you're gonna have to do the controls because I don't know what's going on with me tonight.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but let me pull up his. What else am I supposed to be doing? Because we haven't talked about this, so
I know. You know how it goes. We're still waiting on our next guest.
Okay, so we're looking for Jamie, and she should be our next guest.
Yes, yes, and she should be here any moment. I'm so excited about this journey. Uh,
Okay.
with this, the first journey was absolutely amazing with the first book, and I learned so much. How about you?
Oh, well, cannabis has been around forever, and I came up in the lane of life when it was frowned upon but used widely. And to see cannabis come out of the shadows and be looked on as a positive medical plant that has always been what it's been. This is to me amazing. You know, I came up in that period of time when young ones were sent to prison for having a little bit of a joint in their pocket. So this to me is wonderful, and the work that cannabis, encouraging cannabis, is doing to bring light and truth on this subject, so that people can use it for what it was intended. It's always been intended to be something to be used for health and well-being. Indigenous Americans knew that,
Yes.
and people laughed at it. They used to laugh at, smoking, quote unquote, the peace pipe, but it wasn't always about that. It's just wonderful to see marijuana being accepted as the gift that God intended it to be. Bottom line.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And my husband, as you all know, has COPD, and
Hmm.
we actually use it for the gummy bears for his treatment.
Okay.
And with that being said, it has been amazing because what it does, he doesn't get that euphoric feeling. What he gets is a calming of his
Mm.
entire nervous system,
Yes.
which supports him in keeping his lungs from tightening up. So that
So,
has been amazing.
okay. Well, that's wonderful. Yeah. I have
Yes.
a few friends who have one friend who has MS, and that's how she uses it. And she said when she discovered it and stopped being afraid or ashamed of anyone knowing about it, she said it's remarkable in the way that it helps her.
Yes.
So there's so many applications. We don't know yet fully all the applications that are available for medical marijuana. You know, and again, it was the way it was intended. It was intended as a life helping plant, as so
Yeah.
many plants and roots and berries are. They're there for a reason. There are no accidents. Let's put it
Yes.
that. They were put there for a reason. They were created for a reason. So has
Absolutely.
our friend shown up yet?
Okay, I think I just got a message from DK that one of our guests will not be showing. Uh, what is
Okay.
she telling me? Natasha will be the next guest. So hopefully, if she can just come on in, that'll be
Okay.
great. But we do have a shout out from Tiffany Rose, and she mentions Genesis 1:11.
Mm, okay.
Yes, that's amazing. Um, thank you, Tiffany, for joining us. Appreciate you. Okay, so we got Natasha who's not coming. Um,
Natasha is not coming, or
I
she is
mean Natasha is coming. It was see,
Jamie Lynn.
yes.
Okay, no problem. We're ready for Natasha. We can welcome her in when she gets here.
Yes. Well,
Uh,
we got to if Dr. Bridget wants to step in for a minute and speak, I will bring
Please.
her in quickly. Are you
Hello, Dr. Bridget.
yeah, looking beautiful. Let me go ahead and bring her in.
This is a lovely lady, woman, doctor who is the the backbone and creator of Courage in Cannabis. And
Yeah.
you have done so much work in this field. And we want to hear from you. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yeah.
hear you
Oh,
just
good.
fine.
I've been calling you. I've been messaging you. I wrote messages everywhere.
Oh, I had to turn my phone off.
Oh, yes. So yes, just to fill in, no, Jamie couldn't come. She's ill, so I came in to fill in for her.
Oh, okay, perfect. And we're glad you're here. So,
Okay.
many of our audience knows you, but for those who have not met you, let's quickly give your story.
Sure. Gosh, first of all, it's good to see both of you. It's been a while, so it's wonderful to lay eyes on you, and hopefully both of you are well. So my story, at least in this space, really begins with the fact that I'm a family physician. Um, Probably got frustrated a little bit too early in my career because I realized that I honestly had a factory job. For every patient, there was a diagnosis. For every diagnosis, there was a pill. And if you didn't like the pill, I give you a different pill. And my patients were unhappy. And I felt like I knew more, but I wasn't utilizing it. And so I started working with patients to actually get them off of medications. One of those patients asked me about cannabis. I thought she was crazy. I thought, what could that possibly do? Why would you do this? Could that possibly help? And so I started looking up information to help teach her that there was nothing medicinal about cannabis. In the process, I saw all of this medical research, all this information, what they were doing in other countries, all the possibilities. And really, I learned so much. And so she was a breast cancer survivor. She was a new diabetic. And I started working with her to help her get off of her medications, and really saw that cannabis helped her in a way that traditional pharmaceuticals would never help. And so from there, it really was so incredibly eye-opening that when it became legal in my state, I wanted to be a part of it. I realized a lot of the medical or card offices were more about cards for cash than patient care. So I became certified as a cannabis educator as well as a life coach, and I opened my own offices, which is Green Harvest Health.
All righty. So, this is the second volume of
Yes.
Courage in Cannabis.
Yes.
We rode along with you on the first one, and it was an amazing journey. And believe it or not, we have people still viewing those interviews because they were so insightful, and I learned so much, like you, just from interviewing you on the first volume. I learned so much. I learned
Yes.
so much, and my granddaughter, she works in the cannabis field, and she did an article in a magazine about it. And one of the things she talked about was the Christian side of it.
Wonderful.
Because a lot of times, as religion, because of what they heard, they kind of like frown upon it. So she was very reluctant to even move into the industry.
Yes.
And she found out the benefits when you get into it on a scientific basis and you really learn everything about it, then you know that it's definitely here for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that religion and the plant, we have these ideas that religion and somehow the plant has some issue together, but in reality, there's no correlation there. If anything, it was something that was created for us. It's incredibly medicinal. A lot of the issues that people have with the plant is really more of the man manipulating of the agricultural aspect over time. But the original plant was incredibly balanced and healing. And we're now in a new age where we're learning how to do that again. And so I think we lost our way along the course. but it's always been medicine for people. And so if we can get rid of the stigma, we can help even more.
I totally agree. And
Yeah.
that's what people are fighting against,
Mm-hmm.
is that stigma that was created
Mm-hmm.
during the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
That it was something, one, it was illegal and immoral, and they had all these different things, that labels that they put on it. And it's just a plant. Just like
Mm-hmm.
if you go outside and pick a patch of greens, collard
Yes.
greens, or anything else, it's
Mm-hmm.
a plant, and it is
Yes.
meant to be used for healing. That's the way it was designed, obviously, and this is just a plant that has more healing properties than maybe collard greens or kale.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
it's all
Absolutely.
the same thing. It's all
Yes.
the same thing. And I just get so excited. Last time, like Ida said, we had such a good time
Mm-hmm.
talking to people and learning and listening to you as well. And knowing that you're out there in the year that's passed, just knowing that you're continuing in this work is extremely comforting, because I don't know what lies ahead of me,
Yeah.
but I know where I'm going to go if I get to that point where I actually need, the correct information. This is
Absolutely.
so powerful for our listening audience. Now you know where to go. You have, if you have to come through JMMB and send us a text or an email for us to send it to you, to Dr. Bridget, that's an awesome advantage. It's something new for us. It's for
Mm-hmm.
those who have ever been tied. And I know I'm chattering. I tend to do that. But anyway.
No, no, no. No, but it is true, because I think what holds people back is often not knowing where to start, right?
Yeah.
With anything. With anything.
Mhm.
And so if you have an idea, if you're listening to this, if you're talking to people, if you're just trying, I'm sure watching even the previous shows that we did last year, it gives people an idea of where to start. And people need to be able to relate to the stories that they're being exposed to. And so what I hope that we were able to do with the first book was to present stories that people could relate to, having an incredible variety of stories
Mhm.
where hopefully you see yourself somewhere in there, or someone that you love somewhere in those stories. And with this book, we not only wanted more stories that people could see themselves and relate to, but we brought in names that people recognize. What some names, if you're kind of in the industry, if you're in the know, then you recognize the names, and then other names that you recognize even if you're not in the industry. And the reason for that was not to necessarily celebrate celebrity, but to make the stories of cannabis relatable to
Mhm.
people that you know.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yes.
so important. Yes, it's
Yes.
for people to be able to say, "Oh, I know who this is. Oh, they're
Yes.
doing this. They've done this, and this is what their
Yes.
results are. Oh, okay, so I'm not alone." I think that's part of
Absolutely.
it too. I'm not alone.
Hmm.
That's one of the things that your first book did. It brought out the fact that if this is something that you want to try, you're not alone. You're not
Yes.
alone. There's a whole group of people
Hmm.
who have, through their work, surrounded you and encouraged you to check it out, find out for yourself. And
Hmm.
like you said, when you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
But Courage and Cannabis really has bought it in, has packaged cannabis in a
Hmm.
way that is easy to accept, easy
Yes.
to hear about, and makes you wanting to learn more and wanting to share what you learn with someone else.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, we have, like, the last book we had 18 authors.
Mhm.
This time we were courageous. Take the name for what it is, right? We were courageous enough where we have actually 40 contributors.
Wow.
So
Fabulous.
24 people writing full chapters, and then the rest of them we call the contributors sparks. So the sparks are people that are writing testimonies, So, shorter kind of paragraph or so testimonies or quotes to kind of spread out and intermingle amongst the chapters. So if you're just stopping for a moment and want to just kind of relate to a story, you can either read one of the full chapters or you can just pick up a spark and just see, each story is meant to be inspirational and motivating for people just to understand this space and realize how people have either utilized this plant for healing, where they have utilized it in a way to build a new life and career, how they've utilized it to get beyond their struggles or challenges in life. And hopefully, again, people see themselves or their loved ones in it.
All right.
Wow. So this is definitely going to have a twist to it.
A little bit of a twist. That's right.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I can't wait, Dr. Bridget. So when is the book scheduled to launch?
Absolutely. So we're looking at spring of 2023, so of this year. So within a couple months, we're hoping that we'll be able to get it back out on shelves, and hopefully you'll be talking to the authors along the way. And, you spoke to Rick a little bit earlier, who is, just an amazing, amazing human being. The two of us get in a conversation about, the essential oils of the plant, which we call terpenes, and treatment of different conditions. And it's really exciting to be on one end where I'm working directly with the patients and knowing their health conditions well, and then talking to Rick, that's a grower who's learning how to change and manipulate the plant to be able to treat those patients. And so having that type of camaraderie and partnership in patient care is amazing, because he literally orchestrates and cultivates the plants that I'm looking to help the patients that I'm working with, as well as his own.
Wow. So it's almost customizable. He's
a little bit, yeah. Like, I'm working my best to grow a basil plant right now, and I'm hopefully I don't kill it by the time I get home. So people that are able to do cultivation on this level is fascinating to me.
Yes. Okay, we've got Tiffany, who wants to know how to follow you.
Sure, absolutely, Tiffany. So there's a couple of different ways I do social media, whether you like it or not, right? And so I'm on Instagram and TikTok, where I do educational videos as Dr. Bridget MD. So Dr. Bridget, BRIDGET MD. And I'm on Facebook as Dr. Bridget, as one word, Williams. And I do LinkedIn as well. So it's an easy way to find me and learn about some of the things that I like to talk about in cannabis, as well as wellness and medicine in general. So I'm actually running a wellness group right now called Wellness 23 with Dr. Bridget MD, for people that don't necessarily want to do New Year's resolutions, but want to, start the new year and have an accountability group to make changes. And so you'll find that on Instagram and on Facebook. And of course, go to Courage in Cannabis on Facebook, on TikTok, and on Instagram. And you'll see more about our authors. And that's another way to connect with us as well.
All righty now. Yeah, because this is amazing opportunity, Dr. Bridget. And I'm so glad you reached out.
Yes.
Because I'm still talking about the first interviews.
Yes.
And it's so funny. I go to people's houses and they got YouTube. I'm pulling it up. You got to look at this.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see it in a normalized setting, right? And what you all offer with your shows and the comfort and willingness to cover this is that you're normalizing something that has been heavily, heavily stigmatized for so long. And so I thank you for what you're doing, because you welcomed us in. You didn't pause. You didn't, have issues with it. You didn't censor it. You said you're treating and helping people. Come on in and let's see who we can help. And so I appreciate both of you greatly.
You're so
Absolutely.
very welcome.
Absolutely. We appreciate you because I remember the
Absolutely.
conversation on the first one, and it was like, should I do this? And I'm like,
Yeah.
girl, go for it.
Go for it, right? Go for it. Be ahead of the curve. That's what this is, be ahead of the curve. And that's what you all are doing, without a doubt.
Oh, well,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you so much. We love bringing information to people, to help people, because a lot of times you don't get this in your everyday interactions. You don't get information like this that you can use to really understand something that you really didn't know what you didn't know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I think what people need to understand, it's not about getting high. And I always hear one of our authors in the back of my head, and when one chooses to get high, it is not, let's not demonize that. Okay. It might not be the focus, but when one chooses that, let's not demonize whether it's yourself or your nephew or your brother or whoever. Let's not demonize that, because it is always still medicine, number one. Okay. And the great majority of my patients have never been high one day, and they've been using it for the past 3 years. And so there's ways to use it in a way that is comfortable for your body, because everyone doesn't want that feeling, but they do want the healing. Right. And there are ways to utilize cannabis that fits you. That's the real magic. That whether that heady feeling is something that is comforting for you when you're tired or when you're anxious or when you're in pain, then that's great. And if that feeling of not being 100% lucid is uncomfortable for you, you can still get the benefits without that feeling. And so what I really want to make sure that people understand, whether this is for you or not, let's not judge the people that choose it as an option for them.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Now, what do you think about the medical field? If doctors, how should doctors treat their patients who want to engage in this type of medicine?
Well, the first thing that I usually tell doctors is that before they get too ahead of themselves and, oh my God, the cannabis patient, what am I supposed to do? Doctors have always had cannabis patients, always. We're just now having the conversation. Okay. So before, I've always had, I didn't know they were using cannabis because they weren't allowed to tell me. They were afraid to tell me. Now we're actually opening up the vault and having a conversation and allowing patients to be honest. And so if a patient is being honest with you, God help you for bashing them, for demonizing them, for kicking you out of their practice, because they're, for the first time, they wanted to be honest with what they're doing. And so as physicians, as practitioners in the health field, we need to embrace them and learn why. Okay. Learn why before you make a rash judgment. And then as far as how doctors should approach it as a medicinal option, doctors need to learn about it. Okay. We have always done some halfway experimental medicine, and we have. Okay. And so before you turn your nose up at this, and I will tell you, there's tens of thousands of research articles about cannabis. So this isn't that experimental, to be totally honest with you. There's a lot more things that we know a lot less about that we prescribe on a daily basis. However, saying it is, if you choose to say it's experimental, we've done a lot more with experimental drugs than this. We do experimental trials in the cancer space all the time, in many of these spaces all the time. So before we decide to just call this off and say that this isn't worth something that we want to invest in, no. Look, what is your patient telling you? How every clinical trial is a collection of individual stories that come together in a research paper. So see that patient in front of you and realize that they're a part of your own personal clinical trial. Learn about them. Why do they do it? How does it help them? What is the difference? What is the difference between the pharmaceutical versus the cannabis? And allow this to be a learning point instead of a demonizing or stigmatizing point. as a practitioner.
Yes.
I find that interesting. I didn't know that doctors have been using cannabis for a long time. I thought this
No,
was
they have not been using. I'm saying they've been using experimental drugs, right?
oh,
So
okay.
a lot. So they have not been using cannabis, but our patients
Mm-hmm.
have been using cannabis forever. We just didn't know
Oh,
they were
that's
using
true.
it. Do you understand?
Okay. I see what you're
So,
saying.
we're acting like, oh my God, now I have cannabis patients. You've always had cannabis patients.
So, okay. Okay.
You've
I got
always
that
had them.
clear. Yes,
You
that's
understand?
true.
So, and let's back to what you were saying. Cannabis was a part of our pharmaceutical drugs for many, 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 many years.
I believe that.
And so, without a doubt, within the late 1800s to the early 1900s, when pharmacies were more like compound pharmacies, when pharmacists
Mhm.
were creating and blending, and cannabis was a part of so many of those medications, right?
Yeah.
And so, again, we've always had cannabis patients.
Mm.
It is the prohibition that created this stigma and got this idea that this was something horrible, and it lumped cannabis with illicit drugs that harm people, and there are drugs that harm people. Let's be right.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of lumped it all together, but that is not what cannabis is. It has
You know,
been a part of our medicinal options first of all, from the beginning of time, but it's been in the U.S. pharmacopoeia from the late 1800s to the early 1900s. And it wasn't well, I'm not going to get into the history talk today. Not today.
well, that's
Not
where
today.
I was getting ready to go because I remember my mother was a nurse, and I remember her, what do you call it, Medica Pharmacia or
Mm-hmm,
Pharmacia Medica? That it was a little
mm-hmm,
black book. And as a child,
mm-hmm.
I thought it was amazing because it
Yes.
listed things like cherries and licorice. As a child, I'm thinking, oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
good stuff.
Right.
But I don't remember seeing marijuana in there because I wasn't looking for it.
Right. So
But
it would
I
have been
do,
listed under cannabis sativa as an
okay,
ingredient. They
okay.
weren't using the word marijuana until prohibition, honestly, because it was a word that they were taking a word that was of the more Spanish language and making it into Maria and Juan. They were using it as a way to stigmatize, and it's basically a racist terminology
Uh-huh.
for cannabis. Okay. And
Mm.
so before prohibition, it was cannabis sativa.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting? I would love to get my hands on one of those because my mother was a nurse. I mean, we're talking years ago. We're
Yes.
talking, she came into nursing probably 1930s, 1920s. But yeah, I would love to hear you talk about the history because I know this is one of the things that many people are not aware of, how we moved from the natural way of healing
Mm-hmm.
and the different compounding. Like you'd go into the pharmacy and they'd stir up something and down it would go. We don't know about that and how that changed so
Right.
radically through
Right.
some of the what we call now big business
Mm-hmm. Like
found another way,
big pharma. Mm-hmm.
pharma. And
Yeah.
where did that come from?
Just a
How did we get
piece
from
of
one
that.
place to the other?
Absolutely. Just a piece of that is that the prohibition of cannabis really began at the failure of alcohol prohibition.
Mm.
Interesting.
And here, Jameson, who was for the government, who was supposed to be running this alcohol prohibition, it wasn't going well. He had actually been on record saying cannabis is not an issue. Okay. But then when the alcohol prohibition had failed, he's afraid of losing his job. At the same time, the pharmaceutical companies had recently discovered synthetic medications and pills.
Yes.
And so then they saw, how do we compete against this plant? And Harry Anslinger said, gee, I got to keep my job. And so really there's this banding together saying, you know what? And there was an influx of Mexican Americans more and more coming to the country because of the war that was in Mexico. And so now they're in a space where they're sound familiar? Taking up more and more jobs in America, which wasn't really an issue. But then more and more racist overtones started to develop. Then they were bringing in cannabis strictly for medicinal reasons. It was never really seen as something that people used to get high over the border. It was really seen only as medicine. And then we started using it in more and more social aspects. And then this whole, it always takes a perfect storm to cause craziness, right?
Mhm.
Because, you got to have all the ingredients there. And so as these racial overtones started to develop, as these synthetic drugs were coming on the market, as Harry Anslinger is using his drug, then there was a decision to stigmatize and blame the Mexican Americans and blame the African Americans that were coming in, from, other countries and the islands and what have you. And then this tone started in the US, and cannabis became a part of that tone. And then Reefer Madness became the way that people educated white Americans that cannabis was evil, and it caused people to rape white women and jump out of windows and, all of this foolishness. It allowed Harry Anslinger to keep his job. It allowed fear mongering to develop. People started taking aspirin instead because that was the new synthetic drug. And I think that's history right there.
Wow.
Would you at some time I don't know if this is something you would want to do, that piece when synthetic drugs came into the reality and took over everything, talk about the Flexner report, what it was, how it got started, and who actually did it. Because many people have never heard of the Flexner report.
Mm-hmm.
And I just discovered it because I was doing some research on something else. And that Flexner report actually demonized natural medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And
but it's all propaganda. It's all propaganda with an agenda.
Yes.
Everything's
now
got an
I'm
agenda.
hearing that. I hear that now. And that's where cannabis got done away with under that same tail of bad information. But the whole purpose of that was to make money, for those big businesses to create what we call now big pharma.
Yeah.
But what's beautiful is, again, your courage and the courage of those who work with you to bring this forward. It's like, no, stop demonizing it, take away the stigma. It's a plant. It grows out of the earth. And just because it knocks your profits out of the box, perhaps for a few people, most Americans are going to continue to take pills. That's all that they know. But for those who want something different, stop stigmatizing it, stop demonizing it, because it can help so many people.
Yes.
That's what it was put here for on this earth. It was here to help people heal.
Yes. So the cat is out the box now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely going to be difficult to turn back.
Yes.
At this point, because now people know the truth and they are embracing it more and more and more everywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
More and more everywhere. Wow. This is so interesting, Dr. Bridget.
We just love having you. For those of you who haven't heard of Dr. Bridget before, I think this is our third coming together, third or fourth.
Yeah.
But the first time was we were so amazed and intrigued that we asked her back. And when we asked her back, we found out she was doing this book, which was Cannabis, Courage in Cannabis 1. And they've always been fabulously deep, clear conversations, and that's what I think I really admire in, I'll call it the cannabis nation, if you want to call it that, is that everybody who talks about it, they're coming from a place of reality. It's not an intellectual thing that's going on. They're coming from a place of reality. They're telling you what they know, not what they think, what they know, what they've experienced. And sometimes it's like tonight, Rick Anastas, it was physically his father dying from cancer, physically him having had that experience with marijuana, and then his curiosity being bridged. And last time we had someone who was actually what would you call a political advocate. And she was talking about the craziness that goes on in trying to get legislation passed, that will enable more people to benefit from this. So when you hear the name Dr. Bridget Williams, you will know that you're going to hear the real deal, down to earth truth.
Yes, absolutely. And everybody that's with her is going to give you the same exact thing.
Yes.
I will never forget Candy.
Yes, yes. I thought she was going to come on today when Jamie couldn't come on, but she
Yes.
couldn't make it. So I'm going to tell her that you all were looking for her.
Yes, I definitely. Her story was so amazing. I mean, they was probably giving her the whole pharmacy.
Yeah, they did. They gave her the whole thing.
I mean, she was on so many medications. She could, I mean, pretty much in bed 24/7.
And again, that's what makes medical marijuana, such a gift that is coming out of the shadows, is that people who are even on a limited amount of medication may discover that, oh, if I use medical marijuana, if I'm allowed to, my doctor will prescribe it for me, maybe I can get off all of this other stuff, which I know is harming me. Because I will tell you, anyone who's taken even 5 different pharmaceuticals knows that as the doctor adds each one, something's changing in their body.
Yeah.
They know that it's different. And if you could take a plant and get rid of those 5 and have your body come back into function, how wonderful is that? How wonderful is that?
And that's the really great reward just as when I was starting this early in my career and helping patients get off of medication by helping them understand what wellness was and what their goals were and getting them to a point where they felt that they could handle life change and the challenge of life change, to now help people get off of medications and then allowing this plant to replace that, several medications, is incredibly, incredibly rewarding.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And, I think about my journey in the holistic world. I wasn't always there, and now I read clinical trials on different plants. I've done so many different things, especially with my husband who has a chronic disease. So I think that anybody that has a chronic disease needs to definitely seek alternatives.
Yes.
Well, this is the thing. We've been trained to believe the medication does all the work. And that's not the truth. That you need to be meeting any medication, any surgery, at least halfway. And we're not really taught that, right? So, it's mentioned sometimes, it's suggested, but it is not prescribed. And so any medication that you're taking, there should be a dietary aspect and not going on a diet. Okay. You should be working at changing, not just taking things out of your diet, because that's what we think about in America. Diet means taking something out, restricting yourself. No, look at what you need to add into your diet to make yourself healthier. Right. And then when you start adding in good things, the bad things start to kind of get out of the way. Right.
Yeah.
And then what are you doing mentally? What are you doing emotionally? What are you doing spiritually for your body and for your health to meet those medications at least halfway? And so I feel that this is the story of more integrative medicine. This is the story that naturopaths and other, disciplines and patients are leaving traditional medicine in droves because they want that conversation.
Yes.
Right.
Very important. Yes.
Absolutely. And I don't want to demonize all pharmaceuticals. Like what we've been able to develop through science, over the last, I'm going to just even say 100 years, has been absolutely just amazing and remarkable. But we need to change the mindset with which we prescribe them. It's not an all or none. It's only part of the story. And we need to really, where is your soul in this endeavor, because if you are not present, you will not make change.
Right.
And we really should be talking about change.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And it's so funny you talk about that, because my husband with the COPD, I've been telling him, you got to move, you got to walk. Yes, it's going to be painful at first, but the more you do it, the more tolerance you're going to build up. And so he really starts to resist me with it. And then what happened is his foot swelled up really, really bad. And I was like, you got to walk. So we go to the doctors, and the doctor is saying the same thing I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So his doctor is like you, Dr. Bridget.
Absolutely.
She is very about the mind, body, and spirit.
The mind, body, and spirit. Absolutely.
Behind the healing.
Mm-hmm.
And, so now it's like he's been walking every day. His feet went down tremendously. And with her, my doctor, we work as a team. It's not just go to the doctor, she prescribe a pill. We actually work as a team. If his blood pressure is high, she has me record it every day for a week. I need you to record his blood pressure every day for a week, so that we can make sure we don't need to do any adjustments.
Absolutely.
She'll call me on a Sunday just to talk about what's going on with him. And I'm like, this reminds me of Dr. Bridget.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But that's how it used to be, right?
Exactly.
Doctors knew their patients. And, even more importantly, patients knew their doctors.
Yes.
And that is an aspect that we have lost through this more industrialized corporate type healthcare. And I was in a group the other day, and I'm kind of I kind of sit on the sidelines of this veterans group. And I mean, I'm not a veteran, but I like them and they like me. And I don't know, I just hang out and I don't know what I do. God bless them for having me join. And at the end of their meetings, they always do a check-in and how are people doing. And this one day, the leader said, "Doctor, how are you?" And he kind of laughed and he was like, "That sounds funny to say that." And I was like, yeah, because no one ever wants to see the doctor. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, yay, let's go and see the doctor today. But I was like, but it is important to ask your doctor how they're doing.
Yeah.
Because no one ever asks, right? That's not the business that they're in. The doctor is hopefully there to help and serve you. But in a world where people knew their doctors and doctors knew their patients, you did ask and you did know them and you did support them, each other, because you were working together for a greater good of better health.
Yeah.
And find doctors that you can ask, how are they doing? And be there because you're all in it together.
Yes,
That is
absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
so
I see Candy's trying to come in. I see her device is not connected. So if somebody can text her and let her know we waiting on her, but her device is not connected. Because she was definitely, I will never forget her story. Oh my God.
So let me ask you something. Is this Natasha?
No, this is Candy Flores. She was one of the authors from the
Okay,
first.
that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that all of our I don't know. DK might have a little information, or Candy might have some information on where Natasha is, because I just talked to her, so she should know about it.
Okay, but Candace was just in the studio and her device wasn't connected. So she can come back in again so we can just have a shout out with her.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Yes. Okay, this is Tiffany. Let me just put her shout out up here. She says, ladies, this is my first with you all. I am pleased. I am blessed to be here. Wow. So Tiffany, thank you for being here.
Tiffany.
We definitely appreciate it, and definitely follow Dr. Bridget. She is definitely going to make sure that you're educated and you're going to get nothing but the truth.
Yeah, I look forward to connecting with you, Tiffany.
Absolutely. Okay, so Candy is back, but for some reason it's telling me her devices are not connected. I don't know what that.
Oh, okay. I just saw her pop in.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, it's been amazing to even talk about this. I'm enjoying it very, very much. I could go on and on and on.
And you know, we've had this conversation before, Ida, that you know, I often say it's not all about the weed, right? And so, you know, we're talking about the mind, body, and soul and treating your body in all sorts of ways. But we've had conversations about just being an herbalist, right?
Yes.
And how you've delved into that space of utilizing what you put in your body or on your body, what have you, and realizing natural healing is still a lot of our pharmaceuticals are based on natural plants.
Yes.
You know, they just soup it up and make it synthetic. And so there's nothing wrong with looking at our natural aspects. And I think there's, you know, we're right on the cusp of a humongous resurgence, I believe.
Yes.
Of more natural medicine. As cannabis becomes more normalized, as psychedelics are coming back, not just for recreational, but for pharmaceutical reasons. You know, as we're looking at some more of these things that were once a part of what natural medicine was about, and they're coming back, people are going to be looking at what their options are very differently.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. That's so funny. I know that raw honey is good for healing wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was in CVS the other day and I see Band-Aids with honey actually labeled honey.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, they must
So
be
that's
trying
exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of things. Those of us who remember things that our mother and grandmothers did years ago that we thought were silly. Once we got older and grown, we're going back to them.
Absolutely.
We're remembering my grandmother used to make this horrible cough syrup with red onions and garlic, and it was like, oh, but it worked. All of that mucus and phlegm would come up.
Yes.
What's one of the other ones that, if you have a fever, put potatoes in your socks. You know?
Oh my gosh.
It was like, but it was based on knowledge that they had actually seen it work.
Yes.
And so they passed it down, and then we got grown, and we thought we didn't want to be embarrassed.
Right.
Tell me about what we were doing.
Yes.
And now, like you said, there's a resurgence. All of those things, those homemade remedies, and finding out that sometimes you've got something in your kitchen cabinet
right there.
That's right
but
there.
You know what? You can keep that cod liver oil and that castor oil. Don't come. No.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Oh, I can't. I can taste it now just thinking about it.
Yes. Oh my
I know
goodness.
that cod liver
oil was like, oh my gosh, you think about it and you're just like,
yes.
My mother used to have to chase me around the house to get me and corner me to get me to take that cod liver oil.
Yes, it was horrible.
Oil. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it was horrible. But you know, that if I was really sick, that, you know, here it came, and you know, my grandma, she would find a way for me to take it, and I swear but I was better the next day.
Right.
So
yes, it worked.
Yeah. You know, I was telling someone recently, we were talking about the holidays, and I said, you know what? That was a time we were allowed to eat anything we wanted, as much as we wanted. We could have all the candy, all the cookies, all the cake, all the pie, anything we wanted as much as we wanted it. Mm-hmm. And my mother was a nurse, and she practiced very good nutrition the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. But she had something for us. New Year's Eve, here came the castor oil. And she would she would always buy candy canes, those really big candy canes, long, thick candy canes. And I knew it was coming because she would crack them up, and there'd be a big bowl on the sink, and right next to it be a little juice glass. And we could have the castor oil. She would get it down me. She had to catch me first. But then there was always that handful of peppermint to take behind it.
So why on New Year's Eve? Why?
Oh, because we were getting ready to go back to school. So we had all the junk that we wanted over the holidays.
Yes.
And she was like, "You're not going to be sick." And that was her thought. You're not going to be sick. You're not going
Going
to miss
back to
school.
school. Mm-hmm.
So, we got a good, what they used to call it, physic
Mm-hmm.
cleaning out. But I can still remember that feeling of hearing her crack up that candy cane. And I was
And you
like,
know it was
oh,
coming.
Lord, here it comes.
You knew it was coming.
And it's, but again, those are things that we don't do anymore. We don't regularly clean out our system. We eat pretty much whatever we want, and we expect our bodies to function well. And like you're saying, with wellness, you have to meet the whole wellness paradigm halfway.
Yes.
You can't do things to harm yourself and expect to be well at the same time.
Yes.
But I'll stop chatting because I see we have Candy here.
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe
Hey,
then-
Candy.
Hi.
Where'd she go? Come
welcome.
back.
Well, I will step away. Enjoy this evening. Thank you so much for being here
Thank
for
you,
us.
Dr. Bridget.
Absolutely. Yes. And I'll have you start with Candy, and I will step away. And have a great evening, everybody.
Thank
Okay,
you so much.
too.
Yes, you too.
Right.
Be safe.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hey, Candy.
Hi, how are y'all?
How are you? Welcome.
Yes, welcome, my dear. I still think about you all the time.
Thank you.
Your story was so amazing. So tell our audience about Candy and your experience with cannabis.
Thank you. So I was in book 1, and cannabis, I told my story on how cannabis helped me get off all my medications and basically just start a normal life. Something I never thought I would do again. Kind of now when I talk to clients and patients and friends and family or advise people, they don't believe it. They're like, there's no way you went through that. Or, I'm like, yeah, no, I was in your shoes at one time. And the good thing is that I'm doing a lot better and I have my daily regimen set. I coached myself back in the day. And at the time, I didn't know I was coaching myself. But now that I'm getting my coaching certification to help others with cannabis and CBD, I realized that it helped me heal as I've been studying, because I basically coached myself. It was something that now I can say I'm proud of, because I was able to coach myself with no type of guidance. At the beginning, I was green to everything, and I started learning more as I went. And I started treating myself and doing, little remedies here and there. And until finally I got to a regimen to where, I live a lot more normal. And in book 2, my son is actually, I'm a spark. So my son's actually saying my story, but in his perspective.
Okay.
So it was really exciting. Of course, I'm kind of reading when he turned in, his spark to me. I was like very touched by it, because to be able to hear, your son's perspective. Of course, he's my youngest. He's an adult now, but at the time when I first got ill and he saw me go through all the, the health issues, and to see now to where he was able to, for him to say, like, he couldn't lose me, so not that cannabis didn't only save me, he says it saved him, because he couldn't, bear to be, without his mom that he looked up to. So it's a very touching story. So I guess, it's a little bit of part 1, but I'm excited for him to, or for everyone to read his part from his perspective, and, being a younger child and then growing, because basically when I started, he was already in high school. So he understood that the difference between me being on pharmaceuticals and me being on cannabis.
Yes. Your story was definitely amazing. And I always think about you.
Thank you.
Always think about you, because I think you was on like 15 different medications.
Yeah, I was on 18 medications as well as my morphine pump. So I was on morphine and opiates 24/7. Between my morphine doses, I was also getting bogus doses. And if I needed any extra, assistance for the pain, if I, for some reason that day was more intense, or, opiates was what was helping me at the time. So now I sadly, gosh, with the health issues that I'm dealing with now, and has a lot to do of, maybe if I wasn't on so many pharmaceuticals at the time, but it was like one medication was for this, and then that medication had 2 or 3 others because I had side effects. And so it just went down the line. I'd walk into to my doctor's appointments, and there I was with my bag of medication, and now that I see it, I was doing what my grandparents would do, or, it was sad being at such a young age at the time, but I'm just
Yeah.
glad that I got, help with the cannabis and CBD, and now I'm helping others.
And that's amazing. That's amazing.
You are amazing. You are
Yes.
amazing.
Definitely
You
a
are walking,
testimony.
living testimony for what
Yes.
cannabis can help someone to do, overcome. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you get a chance to go out to our YouTube channel, Just Minding My Business Media, you can hear her first interview, which touched my heart deeply, because I still talk about you to this day. How amazing. Coming from that many medications, you didn't even have a life.
No, I didn't. And that's part of what my son says, so you touched it right to the T.
And to see you now being so productive and being able to help other people, you're a testimony in itself.
Yes. And it's my passion to, I feel like I was given a second chance, so I want to pay it forward to others.
Absolutely. And you definitely was given a second chance. God definitely said, let's show her something different.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Candy, for stopping by. We can't wait to get the book so we can hear read what your son had to say about you. And I know he is just proud of you as we are.
Thank you.
For sure.
Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care, my dear.
You too. Have a blessed night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. So we've got
Natasha is here.
Yes, she is. So we're gonna go ahead and bring her up. Natasha. Okay, we're gonna bring her up as soon as she so let's talk a little bit about who Natasha is.
Oh, okay. Well, Natasha is also one of the authors in the upcoming anthology Courage in Cannabis, Volume 2, which, as you know by now, was envisioned by Holistic Health Practitioner Dr. Bridget Williams of Green Harvest Health. So Natasha Andrews is an attorney, speaker, author, and cannabis advocate. Natasha's background brought her to cannabis after practicing much of her career as an immigration lawyer. She was concerned by the trend she noticed of the disturbing number of detainees facing deportation and permanent family separation because of low-level, nonviolent cannabis convictions. Natasha set out to gain a better understanding of the underlying causes and connections. What she discovered led her to seek avenues of advocacy and sensible drug policy reform. She is here to tell us more about her work in the arena of cannabis and justice. So welcome, Natasha.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? And
I am fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. And how do we pronounce your name, my dear? Because I know we're saying it wrong.
You are not saying it wrong. It is in fact Natasha.
Oh, okay. But I'm looking for the S.
No, it's just like champagne. Nobody says champagne. They say champagne. It is just French.
Okay.
Very pretty name.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So glad to have you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your work.
Okay. Well, You know, I am an attorney, right, by trade and by practice, but essentially I work primarily with the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers. What we do with the NABCL is we bring lawyers from seasoned markets out west for the most part, where they are, apologize, they are accustomed to the cannabis industry and what it entails. And we pair them with attorneys that are from emerging markets to really create a mentorship and a bridge by which folks can really understand what cannabis law is, what it isn't, what it entails, how to properly advocate for their clients, how to properly support their clients, and most importantly, how to shape the industry in the state that they live in, right? Because we have such a complicated and patchwork system of cannabis legalization in the United States that it can be kind of daunting when your state becomes legal for the first time. I think something that we're all experiencing is that we're all seeing a new area of law being created. And I don't know if people realize how significant it is, but that's not something that often happens in your lifetime, where an entire area of law is literally being created before your eyes. And so, as an attorney, it's somewhat overwhelming. You've learned everything that you learned when you went through law school, when you went through your process, when you started out in law. But I assure you that most of us did not learn anything about cannabis or cannabis law because it's new.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wow. That's got to be a serious ride. To
Yeah.
say the least, because that you're right, it's brand new,
Right.
so it's like you creating as you go, so to speak.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I just heard recently that Baltimore is getting ready to legalize recreational marijuana. I think that goes in effect sometime in June or July.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to have to see exactly what that's going to look like, because once they make these changes in the law, what's your thoughts on, jobs, drug testing, things like that? It seems as though some of that stuff is going to have to change.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because part of what I do in terms of community education is explaining to people what cannabis law is, right? And how it affects them. I think there are a lot of people who don't realize that cannabis isn't just somebody else's issue. It's actually everybody's issue, because no matter what you work in or what type of industry you work in or where you work, whether you participate or not, there will be things such as policies and procedures in your office that pertain to cannabis. And you don't have to be a participant or someone who consumes cannabis or someone who needs cannabis in any way, shape, or form for it to affect directly your world. So, yeah, there are a lot of ways for folks to not only be involved, but to benefit from the industry itself. And it's going to be a learning curve for everybody because it's unfolding right before us.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yes. So your chapter in the book, what's the title of your chapter?
Um, it's actually a chapter that's being developed as we speak in terms of its title. Essentially, it deals with my journey. I think it's somewhat unique. But at the same time, something that's relatable. I probably come from an extremely conservative background. Cannabis isn't something that I grew up experiencing and having a connection with. It's something that I learned to understand and appreciate and see um, the impact that it's had on communities in my adulthood. And so for me, I really traveled a journey that was extremely conservative to begin with for a long time. I grew up in a household born to immigrant parents for whom cannabis was something that just was taboo to the extreme. It wasn't just taboo in theory, it was taboo in every aspect and regard. And I chose to raise my kids in much the same way I had been raised, right? Everything about both my professional career and my personal life was from a far extreme with regards to cannabis. And somewhere along my journey, my work as an immigration attorney actually clued me into a lot of aspects of the plant, the culture, the people, and the law that I didn't even really understand at the time. When I left immigration and started contemplating what I would do next, I really looked to my immigration background to see what I had learned and what I wanted to take into the next portion of my journey, my life, and my career. And something that struck me as particularly odd, particularly challenging, and particularly worthy of investigation was the connection between detainees that were incarcerated, ultimately detained, deported, and in some cases permanently separated from their families for nonviolent, low-level cannabis convictions. It's something that kind of stuck with me and bothered me and caused me to take a closer look, a further investigation in what that connection was, right, to our legal system. And I think what I uncovered in that journey is what really created a passion in me to not only educate others as to the history of cannabis and how we came to have prohibition in this country, but also the impact that that has had on families and lives and futures and legacy. And as we move towards the end of prohibition and as everyone is celebrating the liberty and the freedom that cannabis and cannabis business holds, I don't want us to forget that there are lives that were permanently impacted. There are generations that have been permanently impacted by what the war on drugs did. That's really what my chapter focuses on, is that journey for me on a personal level, and how that is relatable to other people who come from a conservative background and are now exploring their ability to participate in the cannabis culture.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. I can't wait to read the chapter, because the incarceration has been huge,
Yes, there are a lot
especially
of people who are wasting their lives away for no reason.
Exactly.
yes, and it's been hard. It's been a hardship for not only the incarcerated person but also the families
Right.
who had to deal with that situation
hmm
over a plant.
hmm I think there was a gentleman, and I don't want to mispronounce his name, so I won't even attempt to say it, but he spent 14 years in prison on a 22-year sentence, I believe, out of California. And he was practicing in legalized medicinal cannabis in California at the time. And he was just recently released, I think sometime last week. And it's stories like that that are compelling enough to take people out of their comfort zone. Again, even people who don't ingest, who don't partake, who aren't part of the cannabis culture. I think it's difficult to not take a look at stories like that and see that that could be anybody. It could absolutely be anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. So if people want to reach out to you and learn more about what you do, how do they do so?
Oh, no problem. First of all, we have a website for the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers, which is www.nabcl.com. And they can always put forth an inquiry there. They can take a look at what we do. We do a lot of community outreach. We do outreach to law students as well as attorneys across the country and allies, people who want to see an equitable and inclusive and a reparative cannabis industry. They can follow me on LinkedIn. They can go ahead and find me on Instagram at NABCL underscore LLC.
Okay. Wow. I'm so glad we met, Natasha, because a lot of times we don't hear this side of the industry, and this is important side. We hear the medicinals and all of this, but the legalities, the injustice
Yeah.
that has happened as a result of cannabis needs to definitely be talked about.
Yeah. And I think for me, what's most important is, I mean, none of this happens without the law, right? So the legal part of it is extremely important. And part of my concern and part of the concern that I think people can see as they look around is there is a void. There are not a lot of Black attorneys in this space. There's a long history of stigma associated with cannabis that probably deters a lot of Black attorneys from jumping into these waters, and it's understandable. But the major problem with that is if our voices are not heard when decisions are being made, when laws are being created, when policy is being implemented, then our concerns are not being put forth. And what will ultimately happen is that laws and policy will be created,
Yes.
and we will sit back and say, well, why weren't we considered? Why were our needs not being considered? I think it's imperative that the government take a look at itself. It was instrumental in implementing the prohibition and the war on drugs, and it needs to be instrumental in fixing what it broke.
Love that.
Amen. I
Love that. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Indeed, they stepped in and made all of these decisions, and look at the not hundreds, thousands of people who have been impacted.
Right.
And
now they
voice
talk
needs to
about
be
their
heard.
hands being tied, but if your hands weren't tied when you broke it, then your hands need not be tied when it's time to fix it.
I heard
I
that.
agree.
Amen to that, my dear. For sure. We're going to have another conversation
Yes.
again, because I like the power that you project. I really do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really
And it's
do.
good. It's just wonderful for people to hear. Now, somebody is listening who's thinking, oh my goodness, I know someone, father, mother, brother, whoever, who is in prison or under some sort of legal restraint.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what has happened just in this brief conversation. Someone is thinking, oh my goodness, finally I can reach out to someone who might be able to help me, who has the knowledge. And just the fact that there is a growing group of Black lawyers who are in the cannabis arena, that is encouraging, because in the past it has not been so. And to go to court with someone who has no knowledge and no concern sometimes for your family or your needs, they're going strictly by the book. Well, that book needs to be changed, and that's what you're doing. You're getting ready to change the book. That in itself is hugely comforting and encouraging. So thank you.
Thank you. That is my hope. My hope is to truly make an impact, specifically in what you're speaking of. And the reality is, when you don't have an experience and you don't have a point of reference, and you don't even have people in your circle of friends and family who can point you in the direction of an issue, it's an honest mistake not to be able to consider those things because they're not part of your world. But that's why inclusion is so important. No one is asking you to do all things, to understand all things, to be able to channel all experiences. But there's an easy solution for that. Invite more people to the table, because it's when you exclude people and you exclude their experiences and you discount who they are and what value they can bring to the table, that's when we are at fault. It's not because we haven't personally had the experience. It's because we've shut out the people that have.
Amen.
All right,
Absolutely, Natasha. Wow.
awesome.
Thank you so much for
Thank
gracing
you.
our stage. And I'm going to be reaching out because we're going to have to do this again.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, and keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
I will. You have a wonderful evening, and thank you for having me.
You too.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Wow. Power, power. We got Reggie in the house. Didn't expect Reggie, but he is here, so we're going to bring him on in.
That's all right. How are you?
Hi, Reggie.
Hi,
How are you?
Welcome, Reggie.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
Good. What brings you to just minding my business? You on mute. Unmute yourself.
I think he's trying to walk to a quieter space.
I think that's what he's trying to do too.
That's exactly what I was trying to do. I would not try to disrespect y'all by
No
here's some
problem.
of the things that were happening.
That's okay.
No, I was just walking through and decided to peek in, and then I walked into just like a heck of a conversation. I appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for joining us. Are you part of the Courage in Cannabis Volume 2?
I heard about it, and then I actually met the author, and I think that's how the email showed up, or it showed up in my, um, or how the link showed up in my email. And I said, let me come in and take a look, and this volume 2 is going to be very interesting.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So I am in finance, but I have a business that essentially supports smaller businesses. My experience has always been in corporate America. And so, in terms of forecasting profitability, capital expenditures, that's my area of expertise, and I'm taking that to smaller businesses who might not be able to. And I don't mean to sound cocky or anything like that, but they might not be able to afford me full time. But certainly, I can lend my skills to them and help them be successful, especially in this space. It's so important. I think one of the things that we're seeing here lately, probably within the past 6 months, is just a reckoning. It's a roll call for those people who came into the industry where there was a lot of investment, there was a lot of speculative money being thrown around, and what we're seeing is a shakedown, and the shakedown essentially boils down to who's about their business, who knows how to run a business, and that's where my expertise lies at.
Okay.
What made you interested in um, tuning in to this conversation on cannabis?
Um, I'm It's sort of some people take this the wrong way, but I actually have an appreciation for the plant. I always have. It came into my life very early on, um, and I enjoyed it. But I was a teenager. I was a kid, and when I had my kids, for various reasons, mostly because I know I experienced it at an early age through a lot of the people or a lot of the elders in the groups that I grew up with. I chose not to expose that to them. And so I walked away from the plant. I walked completely away, and I sort of missed it. Not to put too fine of a point on it, but when they're adults now. I have a 31-year-old and a 28-year-old, um, and I've sort of rekindled my relationship. So all things cannabis, I'm sort of trying to understand because it looks a lot different in my mid 50s than it did when I was a teenager. I'm a lot different. I handle how it affects me differently, but I'm interested in both the experience, the industry, and the business. So when I see things that I'm interested in, I'll put my toes in the water, and that's how I'm sitting here talking to y'all, and I'm sort of floored that I'm having this conversation. So I appreciate it.
Yes, because we definitely didn't
Welcome.
expect you, so you're definitely a surprise.
You
So
know,
thank you for tuning
every
in.
once in a while you get a win in life. Like I said, I didn't expect this, so all
Yes,
good.
yeah. So it must be meant because here we are.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Absolutely, Reggie. So we definitely appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah.
And how do we connect with you?
You can reach me on Twitter. I actually do a lot of live jazz in Charlotte, so you can look at Live Jazz Charlotte or LinkedIn. You can find Reginald Fox.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for stopping by.
Yes.
We
That's
appreciate.
really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a treat. I was like, Reggie, oh, okay. I was
I
looking back
know
And
in my notes.
we looking for you through our list. I don't see
I
Yes.
was
Reggie.
And so
good.
it's really curious that
And
it's wonderful that you showed up just because you showed up. You heard you saw this, you saw the link, and you jumped in. We really appreciate that.
yeah, again, I'm completely unprepared. As you can see, I've tried to do my best to entertain y'all, but it's a good thing that y'all are doing here. I wish that more people ran across this link because I think, I mean, I I love the energy that y'all have with your guests. I do. I think a lot more people would too.
Thank you. Well, we're just minding my business. You can find us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We're always got some hot topics going on.
That is okay. I will make sure that I tune in.
All right,
Very good.
Reggie, and
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Reggie. A pleasure
Yeah,
meeting you.
Thank you
absolutely.
very much. Y'all
Thank
have a
you.
blessed evening.
You too,
Thank you. You
Reggie.
too. Be
Bye
safe.
bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well,
Okay. All right. Can you end the broadcast? I don't know.